Myself Sanjay Bhardwaj from Department of Computer Science and Application, DAV College for Girls, Yamunanagar. The topic of discussion in this lecture is Object and Classes in C++. As we know, C++ is an object-oriented programming language. The programming modules in this language are classes and object. So we will discuss what basically a class is, what are the objects, and how these are used in the programs. Class. Class is a user-defined data type. As the name suggests, user-defined data type means it is not built-in compiler. It is declared and used as per the programming requirement, as per the requirements of the user. That is why these are called user-defined data types. Class basically is combination of data items and the operations performed on those data items. So we'll start with how we will be defining the class in the program. It is used as class, then identifier, in braces, private, colon, data members, member functions, public, data members, and member functions. Braces closed and semicolon. We will discuss these things. The first word is class. It is reserved word, which is indicating that this particular declaration is for class. Identifier, user-defined name given to the new data type. Private. Private members are those members which can be used within the class or by the members of the class. Public. Public members are those which can be used within the class as well as outside the class. The sequence, private and public, it can be even interchanged. That means we can declare private first and then public first and then the private members. However, conventionally we use first the private and then the public members. One of the very important thing is, by default the members are private. That means if we do not mention public or private words, the members will be considered as private members of the class. Another important thing is that we can declare any of the data member or any of the member function as public or private. But most of the time in the programs, data members are declared as private and member functions are declared as public. To repeat, private members are those which can be accessed within the class or by the members of the class, and public members are those which can be accessed within the class as well as outside the class. If we take one example, say I want to declare a class or a user-defined data type for complex type data. We all know that complex numbers are numbers of the type a plus eta b. It consists of two parts. One is real part and other is imaginary part. If I declare class for that, it will be something like this. Class, this is reserved word, and then identifier indicating the name of the class, that is complex. Braces, private. Private means I am going to declare those members which can be used within the class or by the members of the class. It is, say, float, real part of the complex number, and another member is imaginary part of this complex number. These are the data members, and I declared these data members as the private members. Public. Public members, the members which can be accessed within the class as well as outside the class. I declare two functions, say one is input of this complex number and the another is output of this complex number. Brace is closed and semicolon. With this declaration, I declared one user defined data type, and that class is the class complex. It consists of two data members, one is real and the other one is imaginary. It also contains two functions, one is get number and another is put number. These two are the declarations of these member functions within the class. As I said, if I remove this word private, say I am not declaring these privates, by default these two members are going to be the private members. Public word we must mention to indicate that these are the public members of this class. So this is how we declare a particular class in the C++ program. The next step is how to define these two member functions or the member function which are declared in the class. There are two methods of defining these functions. One is defining outside the class and another is we can define these functions even within the class. So we will discuss both of these. I will start with the first one, that is defining the function outside the class. If we define the function outside the class, the definition will be something like, first it will be type. As we know, this type is type of the result given by the function, and we use void when the function is not returning any value. It is followed by name of the class to which this function belongs. The next one is scope resolution operator. Then name of the function, in bracket arguments, braces, the logic of the function, and return expression, semicolon, end of this function. This definition is definition of the member function outside the class. The first type, this is indicating the type of result given by this function. Class name, indicating to which class this function belongs. Name of the function, and these arguments are inputs and in some cases outputs of the function also. This function is very important. This operator is very important, and this operator is scope resolution operator. This operator is binary operator, and this is indicating to which particular class this function belongs. For example, this name belongs to this particular class. This is how we can define the function outside the class. If I take example of this, say this particular function, void get number for this complex class. For this, the structure will be something like this, void. Now void as the type is indicating that function will not return any value. The class name here is complex, as we declared, complex. Then there will be scope resolution operator, followed by name of the function. This is get number, braces. We can write the code here. Say the code is input of real part, and the next one is input of imaginary part, and braces closed. This is definition of one of the function, this one, outside the class. This is very important. I am declaring this function, defining this function outside the class. Type, name of the class, scope resolution operator, and followed by this name of the function, and then particularly logic. No doubt, I can also define this function also. Its definition will be void, again complex, scope resolution, put number, and instead of cin, I will be using the cout for displaying these two part of this data type. Now this is how this function is defined outside the class. The alternative method can be that function can be defined even within the class. Now when the function is defined within the class, the definition can be name of the function. First it is type, then it is name of the function, followed by argument. If I compare it with the first one, in this particular part, I did not use class name and scope resolution operator. As the function is defined within the class, it is very clear to which particular class this function belongs, because this is defined within the class. That means class name is not required, and then scope resolution operator is also not required. This function will be simply how this is within the class. Now particularly I will be defining this one within the class. Void, it is put number, braces, cout, the real part, cout, the imaginary part. Each statement must be followed by a semicolon, which indicate end of the statement. Now very important point. What is the difference when we define the function within the class and outside the class? The main difference is when this function is defined within the class, automatically compiler consider this as inline function. Definition of the function within the class makes it inline. So all restrictions of inline function will be there. It should not be more than few lines. It should not contain the loops. It cannot contain the recursion concept. These restrictions will be applicable there, but positively it will be working faster as compared to the function which is defined outside the class. So by this time we are familiar with how the class is declared and how the member functions of the class are defined. One within the class and another is outside the class. Now after declaring the class and defining the member function, the next concept which is important is the concept of declaring the object. Now what basically the object is? Object is nothing but the variable whose data type is class. We are familiar with the variable declarations, and variable declarations are given as type followed by list of variables. Now to declare the objects, the class is this one. This is type name complex, and if I say C1 and C2, now these C1 and C2 are the variables whose data type is complex. These are the variables whose data type is class. These two are called objects. That means objects are nothing but the variables whose data type is the class type data. How these variables will be created in memory? How these objects will be created in memory? If we create these two objects in memory, C1 is an object of the type class of complex, so it will be having two data members. One is real and other is imaginary. Similarly, this object will also be having two data members. One is real and another is imaginary. Now two objects will be created. First will be the object C1 and another will be the object C2. C1 will be having the copy, that is real part and imaginary part. These are the two memory locations. One will be for real, another will be for imaginary. Similarly, this object will also be having one part that is real and the another part is imaginary. This makes it very clear that every object will be having a separate copy of data members. Say C1 is having these two data members and C2 is also having these two data members. What about the member functions? There are two member functions. One is get number. So very important, the member functions will be created only once. It will be created only once. Same for C1 and same two functions will be used with the C2. That means when the objects are created, data members are copied, data members are replicated for every object but the member functions are created only once. Now, by this time, we have seen how the class is declared and how the objects are created. If I create I created two objects C1 and C2 with different data members, real part, imaginary part, and C2 is having its own copy and the member function that are created only once. Now, the next step is how these objects will be using these members. Now, how the member functions are assessed by these objects. The member functions are assessed by these objects by using dot operator. Now, dot operator is used to assess these member functions. The syntax is the object name, dot, and then the member function name. This is how the member of the class is assessed. For example, say I say C1 dot get number. Now, what does this mean? This means this member function is assessed by the object C1. If I say C2 dot put number, positively it is the object C2 which is assessing the member function put number. So any of the member function can be assessed by the object just by putting dot operator, object name, dot operator, and the member function. Now, the class is declared, the functions are defined, the objects are created, and also we understand how these members will be assessed. Now, combining all these things into a single program, we will be writing a program in which we will use a class that is complex. We will be declaring the class, defining the members. We will declare two objects, and then the members will be assessed. Say it is class complex. This is declaration of the class. Private, those members which can be used within the class. Float, it is real. Then it is float, the imaginary part. Public members, the members which can be assessed within the class as well as outside the class. Void, get number, this is member function. Void, put number, this is another member function. Braces and semicolon. Now, very interesting is why semicolon is used after this braces. Normally in C or C++, braces indicate the end of this structure. Now, why this particular semicolon is here? We can declare the class and declare the object simultaneously. That means I could write C1, C2 here only so that two objects are created. But generally, we declare the class outside the main function. Now I write definition of these functions. It is say void, complex, scope resolution, and get number. It is very clear. I am defining it outside the class. That is why I need this scope resolution operator. Say C in, it is real part. C in, it is imaginary part. This end of the function. This is how this particular function is defined. Void, it is complex. That is the class name. Scope resolution, it is put number. I will display both of these. C out, the real part. C out, the imaginary part. End of this function. So both the functions are defined. Now I will write the main program. Void, main. In the main program, I will declare two objects. One is, say, complex, C1 and C2. Now this is declaration of the object C1 and C2. I hope with the previous discussion it is very clear. Within the memory there will be C1, C2 with real part, imaginary part, with real part, imaginary part, and two functions, get number and put number. I want to input the first object. Say C1 dot get number. Now very important, this get number function will be working with which data? With the data of this C1. This C1 is the calling object. This is calling the function. That is why the data members of this function will be used, real and imaginary part. When we give input, that is when we will enter real and imaginary part, these will be stored here, C1 and C2. Right. The next one is C1 dot get number. If I say C2 dot get number, now the same get number function will be used with C2. Say C2 dot put number. Which particular value will be printed? That is for the C2, because the calling object is C2. And if I say C1 dot put number, this is printing the value of the object C1. In this example, we use all the facts which are discussed in the lecture. First, this particular part is how the class is declared. This is declaring the class, the member functions of the data members of the class, member functions of the class. The second part, this contains how the member functions are defined. These are defined outside the class. The definition of first function followed by the definition of another. And this particular line, complex C1 and C2, this particular line is indicating how the objects are declared in the program, and this part is indicating how the member functions are assessed by using these objects and the dot operator. This particular says C1 dot get number. The function get number is used with the object C1. That means the two values which will be entered will be stored in this particular real and imaginary part. C2 dot get number, same get number will be used but with the data items of C2, because here the calling object is C2, and these two are indicating which one is to be printed, C2 and then followed by C1. Now three very important concepts which we can discuss with this. The first one is, we understand that encapsulation is wrapping up the data and the function into a single structure. Now here in this structure, these are the data members, these are the member functions, and when these two are wrapped in the same structure, this concept is known as encapsulation. Another important concept is data hiding. Now data hiding is making some of the members as private. This concept is called data hiding. Now the very important concept is, I am using here get number. This is a public member. I am using here put number. This is a public member. It can be accessed outside the class. I cannot directly write this real part into the main program, because this is a private data member and cannot be accessed outside the class. In fact, if you see in a broader concept, no doubt these two are used in the main function, but not directly. These are used through these member functions. These member function get number, this is assessing real and imaginary part, and it is using it here. Again real and imaginary part is used here, but not directly, because these are the private members. Another very important concept is data abstraction. Now data abstraction is using the data without going into the details of the process. This is basically the concept known as abstraction. We use at the outer surface without going into the details. As in this main program, I am using C1.get number without going into the details how the numbers are input. Yes, that is mentioned in the function here, but for the main program I don't need these details. Say put number, this is the function which is printing. I am here only writing, that is the function name put number. So this particular concept is called the concept of abstraction. So three important concepts. One is encapsulation, the second part is, that is data hiding, and the third one is abstracted. These classes are also known as abstract data types, because here in these classes, when we declare a class, define the function, after that we need not go into the details. We just use these at the abstract level, and in the main program these abstract statements, these are used at the abstract level only. Thank you very much.